When her parents died, her brother promised to protect her. But instead he stole her dream, her college fund, and left her with nothing. Years later he stood outside a school gate, unable to pay his own children's fees, until the principal said, "Sir, the fees are already paid by your sister." The rain fell softly that morning in Kumasi, turning the red earth around the graves into mud. Amara Ofori stood still, her school shoes soaked, her heart heavier than the dark clouds above. She was only 18, but she felt like the world had already taken everything from her. Beside her, her older brother Nee squeezed her trembling hand. His voice cracked with emotion as he whispered, "Don't worry, Amara. You'll go to university. I'll handle everything." Those words sank deep into her soul. They were her light in that moment of darkness, a promise that life would somehow get better. Their parents had worked hard all their lives, selling handmade fabrics and running a small store in the market. Before they passed, they left behind a modest inheritance, just enough to pay for Amara's university fees. It wasn't much, but to her it was everything. Her future, her parents' dream for her, the legacy they had built with love and sweat. As the funeral crowd began to leave, Amara knelt beside the fresh graves, tracing her fingers over the names carved into the wooden markers. "I'll make you proud," she whispered, her voice barely louder than the rain. She believed Nee's words with all her heart. He was her only family now, the one person she could trust. The days that followed were quiet but heavy. Neighbors came to offer food and sympathy. Nee started handling the paperwork, the insurance, the will, the bank accounts. He told Amara not to worry about anything. "Just focus on your exams," he said, smiling faintly. "I'll take care of the rest." And she did. She studied late into the night, dreaming of walking through a university gate one day, wearing her cap and gown, her parents smiling proudly in her heart. But dreams, no matter how pure, can be fragile. Slowly, the warmth in Nee's voice began to fade. He stopped talking about the university. He stopped mentioning the inheritance. When Amara finally asked, he simply said, "Things are tough right now." She didn't know it yet, but that promise he made at the funeral, the one that gave her hope, was about to be broken in the most painful way. Because sometimes, even family can bury more than loved ones. They can bury the truth. Amara sat on the edge of her bed one quiet evening, her heart thudding as she stared at the numbers on her phone screen. The bank balance, the small inheritance her parents had left behind, read 0 Ghanaian cedis. For a moment she thought it was a mistake. She refreshed the page again and again, but the numbers didn't change. Panic gripped her chest. That money wasn't just cash in a bank. It was her parents' final gift, her chance to go to university, to make something of herself. She walked into the living room, where her brother Nee sat scrolling on his phone, his feet up, music playing in the background. Her voice trembled. "Nee, the account is empty. Where's the money?" He hesitated for a second, his smile fading. "I had to use it, Amara," he said finally, avoiding her eyes. "Business is tough right now. I'll pay you back, I promise." But in the days that followed, there were no signs of hardship, only the shine of a brand new car parked outside the house, the laughter of Nee and his wife Lydia as they dressed up for dinners and weekend trips. Amara watched them, her chest tight with disbelief. Each sound of the car engine leaving the gate felt like her dreams driving away too. When she tried to speak to him again, Lydia's sharp voice cut her down before she could finish. "You should be grateful you even have a roof over your head," she sneered. "Books can wait, my dear. Family comes first." Those words hit harder than any slap. Amara stood there, her eyes wet but her back straight. She wanted to scream that family was supposed to protect, not destroy. But her voice refused to come out. She turned away and went to her small room, where the walls felt colder than ever. That night, as the city lights flickered through the window, Amara quietly packed her school certificates, her few clothes, and the one photo she had of her parents. She zipped the old bag, wiped her tears, and whispered to herself, "They took my money, but they won't take my future." As she stepped into the dark streets, barefoot and alone, she didn't know where she was going. But deep inside, she knew she was walking towards something bigger, a new beginning born from betrayal. The night Amara arrived in Accra, The city lights looked like scattered stars on earth, bright but far away from her reach. With only a small bag and a few sadies in her pocket, she found a cheap hostel room shared with 5 other girls. The air was hot and heavy, filled with the sound of snoring and whispered prayers. The bed creaked beneath her, but she was grateful she had one. That night she cried quietly, her tears soaking the pillow as she thought of the home she'd left behind, and the dream that had been stolen from her. The next morning, she walked from street to street looking for work. Rejection followed her everywhere. No experience, some said. We're not hiring, said others. By evening her feet ached, her stomach growled, and the world felt cruel. But just when hope began to fade, a cafe owner agreed to let her wash dishes. You start tomorrow, he said. No pay this week. Prove you can work. And she did. Day after day, Amara's hands were submerged in cold water, scrubbing plates until her fingers wrinkled. The smell of food filled the air, but she could only afford rice water, a thin, starchy liquid she called dinner. Some nights it was all she had. Yet, as she sat by the window drinking it, she whispered to herself, "He took my education, but he won't take my destiny." Those words became her strength. On her short breaks while others rested, Amara borrowed the cafe's Wi-Fi to read business blogs on an old phone. She watched how people built small empires from nothing. She paid attention to customers, how their eyes lit up when food looked clean and well presented, even if it was simple. She noticed how one smile could make a stranger come back again. The cafe became her classroom, the streets her university. Every mistake, every tired morning taught her something new. Slowly a seed began to grow inside her, an idea fragile but powerful. She realized she didn't need a degree to create something of value. She could build her own path, one that no one could steal. Amara didn't know it yet, but from those nights of rice water and whispered prayers, a golden dream was beginning to take shape, one that would soon change her life forever. It was an ordinary afternoon in the cafe, the kind where the air smelled of coffee and frying oil, and Amara's hands moved automatically through stacks of plates. She was tired as always, but her mind was restless, always searching for something more. Then a tourist walked in, a tall woman with a camera and a bright smile. After ordering her drink, she looked around curiously and asked, "Excuse me, where can I find authentic Ghanaian snacks? Something I can take home? But, cleanly packed." Amara froze for a second, then glanced around. There were snacks everywhere in the streets of Accra: roasted plantains, Kuba cake, groundnut burgers, but all sold on trays, open to dust and flies. Not one was packed neatly or ready for tourists to buy and carry proudly. That question stayed in her mind long after the woman left. It was small, almost casual, but it lit a spark inside her heart. That night, when everyone at the cafe had gone home, Amara stayed behind. The kitchen was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the soft rustle of plastic bags. With her little savings, she bought some ingredients: coconuts, peanuts, and ripe plantains. She began experimenting, testing different ways to keep them fresh, crunchy, and clean. Her first tries were messy. The coconut pieces too hard, the labels crooked, but she didn't give up. She worked until her eyes burned and her hands ached. Soon she learned to seal the snacks tightly, write names by hand, and add a touch of love to every pack. Each packet looked simple but cared for, something she herself would be proud to buy. When she saw the rows of neat little bags sitting on the counter, she smiled for the first time in months. She called them Sika Snacks. In her language, Sika meant gold, and to Amara, they were exactly that: golden pieces of her struggle turned into hope. Every night after work, she prepared more. One packet at a time, her mind alive with dreams. From her pain, something beautiful was being born. Something golden that would soon shine far beyond the small cafe kitchen where it all began. The next morning, Amara woke up before dawn, her small room still dark except for the faint city glow outside. She packed her freshly sealed Sika Snacks into a cardboard box, tied it neatly with rope, and took a deep breath. This was the day she would test her dream. The bus station in Accra was always crowded, a mix of noise, sweat, laughter, and hurry. It was also the best place to meet everyone. travelers, students, workers, tourists. As she stood under the blazing sun, holding her small display tray, people passed by without a glance. Some looked curious but walked away. Others whispered and giggled. One man laughed openly, shaking his head. "A small girl selling biscuits thinks she's a businesswoman," he joked, and the others around him joined in. The word stung, but Amara didn't reply. She simply smiled, wiped the sweat off her forehead, and offered samples to passing mothers and children. Her smile had something people couldn't ignore: sincerity. When one woman finally tasted her plantain chips and smiled, saying, "Ei, this one is good and it's clean too," others began to come closer. Slowly, the laughter turned into lines of customers. By sunset, her box was empty. She counted her earnings that night, tears filling her eyes. It wasn't much, but it was honest. It was hers. Days turned into weeks. Her sales grew. Local shops started asking for bulk supplies. She would stay up late labeling her snack packs by hand, her little room now filled with the sweet scent of roasted peanuts and coconuts. Each label read proudly, "Sika Snacks, a taste of gold from Ghana." Then one day her phone buzzed endlessly. A journalist had written about her, the young woman revolutionizing Ghanaian street food. The article spread like wildfire on social media. People loved her story, the girl who started from nothing, who made Ghanaian snacks look global. Supermarkets began calling. Investors wanted meetings. Orders came in faster than she could pack them. Her small kitchen operation became a registered business. And in a twist of fate, her former cafe boss showed up one afternoon, smiling awkwardly. "Amara," he said, scratching his head, "can I supply you with snacks for your stores?" She smiled, the same calm, humble smile that had built her empire, and replied, "No, sir. But you can buy some for your staff." Nee was sitting in his small, dimly lit living room when the television flickered with the business program. He wasn't really watching. His mind was lost in worries about unpaid bills and hungry children. But then something on the screen made him freeze. There she was, Amara. His little sister. The one he had once dismissed, the one he had left behind. She stood in a crisp yellow suit, smiling beside a banner that read Sika Snacks Ltd, Ghana's pride. The host's voice echoed, "Meet Amara Ofori, the young woman behind one of Africa's fastest-growing food brands." Nee's glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. His heart pounded. "That's Amara? My sister," he whispered in disbelief. He slumped onto the couch, staring at the screen as flashes of her success played. Awards, interviews, her factory, her employees. The same sister whose dreams he had stolen was now a national success story. His own life couldn't have been more different. His once thriving business had collapsed. His car was gone. His wife, Lydia, had left months ago when the money ran out. All that remained were his two children, Kwaku and Esi, who looked up at him every night with questions he couldn't answer. One morning, a letter came from their school. His hands trembled as he opened it. Final notice. Tuition overdue. His heart sank. He had no money left. He dressed in his old suit and went to the school, hoping to plead for mercy. Outside the principal's office, parents whispered as he waited. Some recognized him. "That's Ofori. Didn't he used to own that big company?" Another murmured. The shame burned through him like fire. When he finally walked in, his voice shook. "Please, sir. I just need more time. I'll find a way." But instead of frustration, the principal smiled kindly. "Mr. Ofori, there's no need for that. The fees have already been paid for the full year." Nee blinked in confusion. "Paid? By who?" The principal handed him the receipt. Nee's eyes scanned the paper until they froze at the bottom. Payment by Sika Snacks Ltd, Amara Ofori. His breath caught in his throat. He stood there, trembling, staring at his sister's name. The same sister he had betrayed had quietly stepped in, not to punish him, but to save his children. Nee could barely breathe as he drove through the busy streets of Accra. His old car rattled with every turn, but he didn't care. His heart was pounding harder than the engine. The receipt with Amara's name was still clutched in his shaking hand. He replayed the moment in his head again and again. She paid the school fees. The sister he betrayed had done what he never expected. Shame, guilt, and disbelief crashed over him all at once. When he reached the gates of Sika Snacks headquarters, he froze. The building towered in glass and gold, elegant, powerful, alive. Her name was written boldly on the wall. Amara Ofori, CEO and founder. For a long moment he just stood there, staring. He remembered the little girl who used to chase after him barefoot, who used to believe every promise he made. And now, she had built an empire from the ashes he left her in. He took a deep breath and walked inside. The reception area was bright and welcoming, filled with the scent of roasted nuts and sweet coconut from her products. The employees moved with purpose and pride. One of them asked politely, "Sir, do you have an appointment?" His voice cracked. "Just tell her. Her brother is here." A few minutes later, the glass doors to the main office opened. Amara was there, sitting at the head of a long table discussing logistics with suppliers. She looked poised, confident, and graceful, every inch the leader she was meant to be. When her eyes met his, time seemed to stop. She rose slowly, her expression unreadable, then gave a small, polite smile. "Brother, it's been a long time." He couldn't hold it in anymore. He fell to his knees right there in front of her team. "Amara, I'm sorry. I ruined your dream. I was greedy, blind. Please forgive me." His voice broke as tears streamed down his face. The room went silent. Her staff looked on, unsure whether to move or stay still. Amara walked over to him, her own eyes glistening with emotion. She placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Her voice was soft, but it carried the strength of every storm she had survived. "You didn't ruin my dream, Nee," she said quietly. "You redirected it." And in that moment the air felt lighter, as if forgiveness itself had walked into the room. Amara led Nee through the glass corridors of her company in silence. The walls were lined with photos of smiling children holding snack packs, and quotes about hope and resilience. He followed her quietly, his eyes lowered, his shame heavy like a chain. They stepped outside into the open courtyard, where rows of children in bright uniforms were seated, laughing and eating their Friday meals. It was the company's tradition, Sika Snacks Free Lunch Day. Every week, hundreds of children from poor communities were brought in to eat and listen to stories about courage. Amara watched them with a soft smile. "Every child here gets a meal and a story," she said gently, her voice calm but filled with memory. "Because I know what it's like to go hungry while someone else feasts." Her words pierced Nee's heart. He remembered the time she had gone to bed hungry in his house while he and Lydia dined at restaurants. He felt a lump in his throat as he tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. The laughter of the children echoed around them, pure, innocent, healing. She turned to him and handed over a small brown envelope. "These are your children's sponsorship papers," she said simply. "Their school fees, uniforms, meals, all covered for the year." He looked at her, stunned. "Amara, why would you do this? After everything I did?" She looked at him, eyes glistening but calm. "Because I'm not repaying evil with evil," she replied softly. "I'm breaking the chain." Her words hit him harder than any punishment could. His knees weakened as tears poured down his face. He clutched the envelope to his chest and whispered, "You're a better person than I'll ever be." But Amara only smiled faintly. "Not better, Nee," she said, shaking her head. "Just stronger. Because pain taught me what love really costs." For a long moment they stood there, surrounded by the laughter of children and the warmth of forgiveness. The sister he had once betrayed now stood before him, not as a victim, not as a rival, but as a woman who had turned pain into purpose. And for the first time in his life, Nee understood that true power wasn't in wealth or pride. It was in grace. Months later, the man who once destroyed his sister's dream now carried boxes of food under the hot sun. Nee's hands were rough, his shirt stained with sweat, but for the first time in years he felt peace. Every Friday he showed up at Amara's foundation, helping load trucks that carried meals to rural schools. He didn't ask for money or forgiveness anymore, just a chance to serve. Sometimes he would watch the children laugh as they received their food packs, and he'd whisper a quiet prayer of thanks that life had given him another chance. Amara never treated him like a stranger. She greeted him kindly, offering him water and a smile. She didn't remind him of the past. She didn't need to. Her calm presence said it all. Forgiveness had already done its work. Slowly Ni began to heal. The guilt that once chained his heart started to lift, replaced by humility and purpose. Meanwhile, Amara's company grew beyond anyone's imagination. Sika Snacks opened branches in Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa, employing hundreds of women and feeding thousands of children. Her story spread across the continent. Newspapers, TV shows, and even business schools began studying her life. They called it "the girl whose brother stole her future," and built an empire from the ashes. One evening, Amara stood on a grand stage at a business award ceremony. The hall shimmered with lights and cameras flashed from every corner. She looked radiant, strong, calm, unshaken. When she received the award for Entrepreneur of the Year, she didn't talk about profit or success. She spoke from her heart. "Family can break you," she said, her voice echoing through the silent hall, "or become your reason to rise." I chose to rise. For a moment there was silence. Then the audience rose to their feet. The applause was thunderous, echoing like waves. Ni, standing quietly at the back, clapped with tears in his eyes. That night, everything had come full circle. The sister he had once betrayed now stood as a symbol of grace, and he, the brother who once fell, now found redemption in her light. Years passed, and Amara's name had become more than a brand. It was a symbol of hope. On the outskirts of Accra, she built a beautiful sunlit center surrounded by green fields and laughter. It was called the Ofori House of Hope, a place where young women could learn business, leadership, and most importantly, integrity. Every corner of the building carried her story, from the humble snack stand by the bus station to the empire that had changed lives across Africa. At the entrance, a bronze plaque caught the eye of every visitor. It read, "Built from betrayal. Dedicated to forgiveness." Those simple words carried the weight of everything Amara had lived through. The pain, the struggle, and the strength it took to turn hurt into healing. Students often asked her what the phrase meant, and she would smile softly and say, "It means that even broken things can build beautiful futures." Inside the center, young women listened to her lectures, their notebooks open, their eyes full of dreams. She taught them that success was not just about making money, it was about lifting others while you climb. She shared her story not to gain sympathy but to remind them that forgiveness is not weakness. It's the power to break the cycle of pain. Years later, on a bright graduation day, the courtyard was filled with families, music, and pride. Among the graduates stood a young man, tall, confident, and smiling, her nephew Si's brother. When his name was called as Best Student of the Year, he ran straight to Amara, wrapped his arms around her and whispered, "Aunt Amara, thank you for giving me the chance my father took from you." Tears welled up in her eyes. She looked at him, her heart full, and said quietly, "Then it was all worth it." In that moment, the circle of forgiveness was complete. What had once been a story of betrayal had become one of redemption. The Ofori name, once stained by greed, now stood for grace. And as the sun set behind the House of Hope, Amara knew this was her true legacy. Not revenge, not wealth, but forgiveness that changed generations.